editor of Variety. Thank you so much to SCAD, Savannah Film Festival for having us back. Joker, what a great breakfast movie, right? I am so excited to be here today because she's one of the best in the business. Please welcome costume designer Arianne Phillips.
I'm so amazed that people are here this morning. Thank you for being here.
So I'm excited to dive into the costumes of Joker 2 because you came into this, I'm sure you've all seen the first Joker, right? So Mark Bridges had built and established, that look. Talk about coming into Joker 2 and the conversations that you had with Todd about what this would look like while still honoring what Mark had built before you.
Yeah, when I got the call, I was like, I don't think so. I actually never knew. I assumed Mark wasn't available. He's really busy. He's a friend of mine. He's a colleague. He's brilliant. I loved the first movie. And I was like, why? I don't think I want to inherit someone else's work. And the writer, who's a longtime friend of mine, said, just read it. I'm not going to tell you about it. And when I read it, I was so blown away. First of all, I was thrilled there was a female character, and I felt like I could add something to that. And then the musical aspect was just so outrageous. It was like nothing that I would ever assume. And it was exciting to me. And having done a lot of films with music and theater as well, I felt like I could add something to it, which is always kind of what I'm looking for when I'm reading a script. So I was intimidated, and also I just felt like, also because Mark and I generationally have come up together, Mark Bridges, the costume designer from the first one, and I felt like a responsibility to preserve his world and build on it, and that was it. So Todd and I first met on a Zoom, and it's really, costume design is really part of world building, and not only character development, but world building. And the world was so clearly defined in the first movie. So talking to Todd, that there is this direct continuity as the film opens, and well, the cartoon's amazing, right? I love that cartoon, so great. But then it opens in Arkham, so it's really even though it's 2 years later, he's been in Arkham 2 years, it's a direct continuity from the first movie. So it was great. It was embarrassment of riches for a costume designer, really, to be able to enter this world. Brilliant Larry Sher. I mean, the cinematography is, I think it's one of the most beautifully photographed films I've ever worked on. Do you guys agree? I mean,
yeah, yes.
So beautiful. I feel like there's a lot of goosebump moments, and we see it in the trailer a lot, in the waiting room when Lee draws the smile on the mirror and Joaquin Arthur's face comes up. There's just so many in the courtroom with the fantasy, with the single spotlight. There's just so many. As a costume designer, I'm looking for that kind of inspiration, the way it's lit, the way it's shot, the kind of lenses. So Mark Freeberg, the production designer. So Larry Sher, Lawrence Sher, the cinematographer, and Mark Freeberg, the production designer, both worked on the first film. So being able to be the new kid on the block was intimidating, but also incredibly exciting. And I always think that being a little bit afraid when you enter a project or intimidated is a good thing for me, because it helps me bring my A game. So.
I mean, Arianne, you totally brought your A game to this film. Talking about being one of the new kids on the block, another new kid on the block was also Lady Gaga, who plays Lee. Talk about collaborating with her, and also how you wanted her to look, because I've spoken with Larry Sher, and he said, he framed her, she's meant to like represent love. How did that come? How did you reflect that in your costume design?
Well, in the first meetings that I had, so Todd Phillips had a relationship, knows Stephanie, Lady Gaga, from A Star Is Born, because he was one of the producers. So he basically, him and Scott Silver, the writer, wrote this part for her. And they had a rapport and a friendship already. So in the beginning, we had meetings together. And Stephanie is really excited about this kind of Harley Quinn origin story through Todd's vision of Harley Quinn, unlike the Harley Quinn we know from the comic, which the animated series, which came out in the 90s, and then of course Birds of Prey, Margaret Robbie's version, and how this would be like Joker rooted in reality. So the first few meetings were with Todd, and then at a certain point, Todd said, okay, you guys just go do your thing, because we didn't start shooting her scenes until like 6 weeks into shooting. So I got a lot of time with her. And we have a similar language because I have done a lot of music videos and worked with a lot of artists. So, and I understand working with a brilliant performer who's also a musician, especially Stephanie, like her, she works from often, her character, she creates her own characters in her own work, like with her tours at Chromatica, and she has such a strong visual style. And that is really her access in, and she's just, it was incredible. We did these long sessions, fittings, where we tried a million things. She's similar to me in that being prolific in a fitting and not getting fixated on one thing. I made a lot of prototypes. All of her costumes were made for this film, and all of Arthur's costumes, which is a real luxury, because we don't always have the time or the money to do that. So we just played, she works very closely with her amazing hair and makeup team that Jazz, Sarah Tano and Freddie Aspris, and we just put music on, and we'd have these 2-hour fittings, and we did those, and then we would show Todd the photos. So I've never felt so supported and so engaged, and so it was very like we were in the sandbox and we were creating things together. It was really satisfying.
It's amazing. You mentioned you work with some music artists. I mean, if you don't know, please go out and watch some of Arianne's work, working with Madonna, Lenny Kravitz, some incredible artists out there, and of course, Walk the Line with Joaquin. What was it like working with Joaquin again this time around? Because when was Walk the Line like?
So Joaquin and I first worked together 20 years ago on Walk the Line. So I have seen him over the years. We are similar circles for work and friends, and I hadn't seen him in a while. And when I saw him when he came in for the first fitting, he said, well, I guess we just work on films with music, which is very sweet. And he's a producer on this, so he really was helpful for me, just in terms of being able to dialogue about all kinds of aspects of the film. So it's great, and he's, no one's more committed than him, and he's really a once-in-a-generation actor. He's brilliant.
I love how you expand, how you build on, the first film, and you mentioned Arkham. Like, talk about designing the Arkham uniforms. I'm curious because that was a lot that you had to do.
Actually, that was the most challenging part of all the costumes. Todd is very color specific, and as a costume designer, I always start with color and silhouette. And knowing, creating this world, the colors and the aging, we manufactured all the costumes, and as well as the guards, like the guards, I guess we call them the singing guards. So it was a long process, to be honest. I mean, I did all kinds of iterations. We camera tested fabric, we overdyed, we dyed, we overdyed. We had disasters where we aged them and overdyed them so much that the costumes fell apart. And then I was inspired by, Todd had this video about this brutal documentary that he had us all watch called To Be Kept Follies. And it's about an institution in upstate New York in the 60s, a criminally insane mental institution. And it was just horrific, like a real forgotten place. The documentary is hard to find, but I can't remember where Todd got it exactly. But it really helped us kind of navigate what we were, what Todd was trying to create was this like forgotten place. And it was the second time I did a mental institution too. The first one was Girl Interrupted, but that was kind of...
Yes, you've got Girl Interrupted fans in the story.
Yes.
Woo! Thanks, I love that movie too. That was kind of, great impetus for the minimum security part where we meet Lady Gaga's character, which, was different, where you can wear kind of the hospital issue, like scrub pants and your own clothes to show that dichotomy between the E wing and the B wing.
You are no stranger to designing costume for music and movement. What was different, or how did you approach designing costumes for the musical numbers in Joker 2?
Well, it wasn't different than, having design tours and lots of music videos, theater, and other musicals, like Hedwig and the Angry Inch I did years ago. And there was a lot of rehearsals that were happening, so Joaquin or Stephanie would come to me before or after a dance rehearsal or a music rehearsal, and they really, Joaquin had to learn how to tap dance, and you see in that great fantasy sequence, and the ballroom dancing on the rooftop and all that, they worked on it for a really, really long time. So my process is to make prototypes for them, so that beautiful white dress that she wears in the rooftop scene, we made different iterations to make sure it was inspired by Ginger Rogers and Fred Astaire. That was like the inspiration, like the Golden Age of Hollywood. But then we made prototypes for them to wear in rehearsal, and then I would go to rehearsal and see what was working and what was and wasn't working. So it's just trial and error and having a little bit of experience in that area.
When we spoke previously, you got to design the Joker suit. Your vision of it. Talk about that this time and creating that and finding the right shade of red.
Well, Mark's suit is incredible, and one thing I learned was that when he designed the Joker suit for the first movie, there's 3 different variations of the red suit that are very subtle, that you probably in the end be challenged to see in the first film, just because of lighting. But it tonally, I think, really helped Joaquin and Todd, just in terms of the stages of Arthur as Joker in the first movie. So there really were no costumes left from the first movie, because we requested all of them from Warner Brothers to look at them and study them. And there was like one stunt costume, not even Joaquin's, and I think there were costumes on display in Japan and this, and they just kind of got scattered. So I had to call Mark and be like, please send me any photos you have. And he had some, so he sent me photos. So it was crazy, because you'd think he would have the original suit. We changed the color of the the Joker suit that Mark designed is very similar to the one in the fantasy in the courtroom, and also in the Joker and Harley show when they're in the fantasy sequence. And it's tonally a bit different, but basically it's similar. And then my idea for the fantasy sequences was that we would keep the same silhouette of the Joker suit and change the color. There's a brilliant movie that I saw many, many years ago in the 90s called The Cook, the Thief, His Wife, Her Lover by Peter Greenaway. I recommend seeing it. And there's this like idea that the costumes change. The film is shot in these long dolly shots, and on a stage, the characters walk from one room to another, and when they enter a room, the very same costume changes colors, and it literally the costume changes, and I just thought that was really inspiring. So that was my inspiration, and luckily Todd embraced it for the fantasy sequences so that he would stay the Joker archetype in the silhouette, but then the colors would change. So you see the Joker suit in a blue version in the jazz club, the white version in the wedding fantasy, and on and on.
I love that, and I love this insight that you're giving us. What about the diamond pattern and how that progresses and into, throughout the film, and then we finally see it all in, at the end when Harley has emerged in the red, black, and white?
Well, I have to hand it to Stephanie, Lady Gaga, because she really wanted to homage the original animated kind of Harlequin character of Harley Quinn, and it's in the name, right? And so I was a bit resistant, to be honest, and I can't speak for Todd, but Todd was very clear that this, with the first film, it's obvious, it's kind of an alternate, it's not really the DC universe in the way that we know other DC films. There's a gritty reality to it, and there's that gravitas of reality. But Stephanie was persistent, and I think she just broke me down over time, and in a positive way. And then I started thinking about so Arthur's Joker suit is rooted in the fact in the first movie that he works as a clown. So there was a reality to how the Joker suit in that movie became this Joker persona, but it was rooted in a practical world. So I felt that the onus was on me to figure out a backstory or a reality for where she would end up at the end as Harley Quinn. So my idea, because the film was set in a couple years later than the last one, like 82, was that she was, punk rock was emerging. There's a club on the Bowery in the Lower East Side called CBGB's, where like the Ramones and all these really great punk bands started. And she is this sassy sycophant, she's like an obsessed fan, and I figured she would have cobbled together bits and pieces to kind of create her persona from thrift stores. So the idea, the first thing I started with was the idea that she had ripped out, the diamond corset at the end that is actually made from muslin, like it would have been an underpinning in a Halloween costume, basically, or that she found at the thrift store. So, and then I found those diamond tights by a really great, tights are impossible to make. You really have to manufacture them a certain way with certain machines. But so those diamond tights, and that kind of was a balance. And then the red jacket, there's a technique where you can pleat shapes in fabric, and one of my great team members who works in fabric said, oh, well, we can probably pleat diamond pattern into this red silk fabric. So it all just came together, and Freddie and Sarah did their magic with the hair and makeup, and the color palette is inspired by the animated character of the series, the DC series. So it took a little time for me to ground it in reality. So.
You mentioned working with Frederick and Sarah, and talk about the importance of collaboration between department heads, not just obviously you're working with personal makeup artists and hair artists, but you've got Larry Sherry, you've got production design, everything. Like, talk about how important that is in your process.
Yeah, I mean, it's everything, especially walking into a world that's been created already. So I spent a lot of time with Larry. Did a lot of camera tests where we go down to Oscar Nemetz and test fabrics so I could see the colors and the lenses. He would use different lenses and different techniques on this film. That was a progression from the first film. And then Mark Freeberg, the production designer who I'd worked with before, kind of imparted his experience on the first one and what we were doing on the first one. So it was everything. I spent a lot of time talking to them. And then Sarah and Freddie, like me, Stephanie's hair and makeup artist, they were also new to the family. So we really kind of bonded being the new kids. And I basically lived in their trailer, and we did a lot of tests together, and they came to all the fittings. So we really became our own family within the bigger family, which was great because we were constantly trying to figure out like what was okay and what wasn't, like how to fit in this world and make it feel right. And to Stephanie's credit, she was 100% with us, engaged with us, and we were doing this as a group. It's very satisfying that way. And also my team, I had a really wonderful team working with me. So it was a very positive experience.
I'm curious, were there any colors that you were like, we're just not going to use this color in this film? I'm always curious when I speak with costume designers about that and those choices.
Yeah, I'm really sensitive to green, blue, and red. How I use that, I'm usually very, like this color would never fit in a film, ever. It just sucks so much attention unless it's like daylight, and it depends, the way that, so with Larry, we tested a lot of colors. I purposely wasn't using any red because of Arthur's, and that is a very oxblood, deep, deep red. But Stephanie's red at the end is very bright. And I use that, like if you ever see any of the images or you remember the crowd scene on the step of the courthouse, it really was powerful because I've tried to avoid that color than like clown noses, they have that red. But, just testing. We do a lot of over-dyeing with colors because the way that digital film and old school film has a tendency to, red, green, and blue can be very sensitive. So I tend to like a lot of black. I like colors to feel gritty, I guess, in a way. So we did a lot of color treatments, but on that, and that red jacket of hers, that fabric had, it was a silk woven fabric, and it had a little bit of black in it. And I think it helps kind of, color controls everything. I think I learned that in theater about helping the audience know where to look. Like you can use color to help guide the story, and that's always really fun.
Oh my gosh, I love that. We are going to have to wrap soon, but one of my last questions for you is what advice, you gave some great advice just a moment ago, but what other advice would you give to this audience out here today?
Oh, I guess just in general, this is just, my own path, but I believe that as filmmakers, that you should, especially when you're in school, study every aspect of filmmaking, even if you're dead set on being an actor or a cinematographer or a costume designer, to have understanding of